and welcome to another episode of Not Too Deep. I'm your host, Grace Helbig. Today we have the loveliest woman, author, actor, activist, producer, in whatever order you want. Sheetal Sheth here with us today. She's absolutely lovely. Did I say that? I probably did. It's just because she is. She is the author of the children's book, Always Anjali, and the author of the upcoming children's book, which might be out already, Bravo Anjali. We talk all about what it's like to write children's books and the importance of, talking to children about what people might consider adult things, but are just like actual conversations you should have with children, and how that might be overlooked by a lot of people. We also talk what it was like getting diagnosed with breast cancer, raising 2 children, and then all the while trying to be a lovely, proactive artist in the world. She's just incredible. I had the best time talking to her, and I hope you really enjoy this episode as much as I did. So please enjoy this episode of Not Too Deep with Sheetal Sheth.
Not too deep with Grace Helbig.
Sheetal.
Yeah.
I am so excited to talk to you.
Me too.
I have so many questions for you, but one of the things I like to do for guests that I think are kind of multi-hyphenate, multifaceted, is ask them, how do you describe what you do?
That is
I know it's putting you on the spot, and so it is a bit much for up front.
No, but you're right. I mean, I think it's good for us to kind of find the words. But I guess the best way for me, I would say I like to tell stories in different mediums in different ways. But at the end of the day, I do feel that I am telling stories, and I generally focus on telling stories about traditionally marginalized communities.
Yeah. You have such an interesting career path that I don't know if you sought this out or could have predicted anything about it for yourself. But I'm curious how it's all kind of happened linearly. Like, you went to NYU Tisch, which I'm hyper fascinated about. What was for acting, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So what's that experience like, first off? Because I have ideas. My imagination can run wild with what I think it's like.
It's probably what you think it's like.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of different ways of experience in Tisch. I mean, for me, when I discovered I wanted to be an actress, which was in high school, Tisch was kind of the holy grail. I was in a small town in Pennsylvania. I really wanted to get to New York. I thought it was the best of both worlds. You can go to acting school, a great acting school, and live in New York City, all of those things.
Yeah.
And so I was thrilled when I got in. It's a whole kind of process. And what I like to say with reflection, not while I was in it, I'd probably have a different answer, is that you get what you make out of it. Like, what you put into it, you get out of it. And Tisch is incredible, and it has so many resources, but they're not, you have to kind of seek them out. You have to be proactive. Yeah. They're very much about, and now it's been a very long time, not to date myself, so I don't know if it's still like that. But when I was there, they were very adamant about not auditioning and being in professional things. Like, they really wanted
outside of the school. Oh, wow.
And so they really encouraged us to just focus on the work and the training.
Wow.
Which I thought was interesting. There was a few, I thought it would be, what I found that they started doing later was they started to do the business of acting classes, which I think is as important as obviously training.
Yeah.
Because it's a whole other thing. But to be honest, it was a really wonderful experience. And I have some of my best friends to date from college, and we've all kind of grown in this industry together. But also very much a bubble. And when I left, I was not prepared.
Well, I mean, which is so wild to think about, because you're going to New York, which is like, this constantly moving. I'm from New Jersey originally, and also moved to New York after I graduated college. So it's wild to think that you can be in a bubble in such a fast-paced environment around all of you.
It is. I know you think there's a dichotomy there, but there really, it really was that, because you're just in your space. You're an artist, you think you're really like in the you're doing your thing. But then when I left, I mean, because the thing is, they were inclusive and colorblind. And they didn't like the things that happened in the world and the things that happened in our industry were not things that we dealt with because we were just all doing work, and just trying to be the best actors we could be. And so, and maybe, and I think hopefully now that they now talk about some of that stuff because I think it's important, but at the time it was really, but I feel very lucky. I had a great foundation. I went and did a study abroad one summer in Amsterdam. I did a theater school there, which was like a dream for a lot of reasons.
Sounds wild.
It was amazing. Yes, it was all of those things. And then, when I finished, I ended up moving to Los Angeles, and I lived there for 13 years. I only came back recently, and so
Well, it's so interesting to me because obviously we have Bravo Anjali, the book that's coming out or will be out by the time this podcast goes up. So if you haven't pre-order already. But like you said, you want to tell stories. And in looking at kind of your acting credits on everything, you've been in movies like I Can't Think Straight, The World Unseen, all of these movies about, gay communities at a time where it wasn't really where we're at now. So it feels like I don't know if it's intentionally or unintentionally, been kind of tackling these, like you said, marginalized communities and like seeing the unseen kind of thing.
Yeah. I didn't at the time, it wasn't like I was thinking about it that way.
Sure. But
when I look back at what the movies were when I did them, I do realize now like how profoundly impactful they were and why they are.
Yeah.
And also, we were a little bit ahead of our time in the sense of, a lot of the movies I did that because I love independent movies and we were telling stories that at that time, like studios wouldn't greenlight. Yeah. Whereas now we're in a different world. And so it's like, it's interesting because I see certain people do certain movies and I'm just like, we did that like 15 years ago, by the way. And I'm like, been there, done that. I've already like moved to the next thing, but okay, fine. If people want to watch it now, go ahead and watch it. But also like, let's rewind to like what we did, so a little bit before our time.
But that must be like very layered and interesting to go, like we were, quote, taking a risk by telling these stories back then that now are suddenly, trendy is not the right word, but like becoming more prompted in pop culture. And so it must be layered to be like, kudos, glad you guys are, seeing these stories. But like, we were screaming at you back then about it.
It's true. And to the point where, I've almost every one of my projects, I get an equal amount of like vitriol thrown at me as I do love. Wow. When a number of my movies came out, whether it be my first one or if we talk about I Can't Think Straight in The World Unseen, because at the time you were not seeing, female driven love stories.
Yeah.
Gay characters. I was Muslim in one of them, so there's a lot of just stuff wrapped up in that. Now for me, I read the script and I was just like, oh my God, this is beautiful. And I want to tell the story. And it was based on true stories. But when those movies came out, I was shocked. Also, that's probably me because I'm an idealist and don't realize how messed up people are. Yeah. But the amount of like, you should die. Why would you ever do this? Why would you make this movie type of emails I would get was really disturbing.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's like a testament to like the art provoking people in a way, but at the same time, disappointing to see what people do when they're provoked and like, real feelings come out in some sort of way. But nothing but respect and admiration for you, like taking on those parts and doing all of that. I'm curious how we get into the writing children's book narrative pops up for you. Talk me through this trajectory.
Yeah. So, it's not completely out of the blue in that I have worked with kids my whole life. It is
you have a few.
I have two of my own.
Okay. So you have a test audience.
I do. They're my focus group with all my kid stuff always. It's great. But when I was, since I can remember, I have been, whether it be volunteering, babysitting, working, peer helpering, mentoring, like it's something that I love since I was very young. I was always like the rep at my school to like go and talk to the younger kids. I was always like I would put on, I remember I was part of a theater group that we would make up like issue-based things that we would take to the elementary schools to talk about drugs or whatever it is we need to talk about. So it's something that I've always, if I wasn't an actress, I would be a teacher. In fact, I thought I'd always be a teacher for the longest time until I started finding acting. And so when I was at NYU, I took a lot of education classes. I probably have a minor in it. I don't remember if like it actually ended up happening, but I think I did. I was also part of AmeriCorps, which is, you know, President Clinton's program where you go into schools. And I did that for 4 years. I, you know, developed lessons plans. So this is not out of the blue.
Right. This is, you've been training in this world.
I know kids in a way that is different, you know, like I certainly connect in a way, but in terms of the writing, you know, it was when I was pregnant with my first and much like all of media, as you know, and we know, you know, I was starting to read children's books and was like, are you kidding me? This is what we have. This is the best we can do. Like, oh my God. Yeah. And I was so upset. I remember because I was pregnant and I was hot and I was like uncomfortable. And I would spend all these hours in a bookstore and I'd be like, oh. And I would ask them, like, bring me all the books about, you know, whatever, with different characters of color, this, that, whatever. Yeah. And when it came to South Asian representation, it was always about Diwali or Holi or Eid or some religious thing or some extraordinary situation. And I was like, do they know that we also have pets and play instruments and play sports and have parents and have dinners and like can do all the things? Like we're brown 24/7 and we do lots of things, not just celebrate holidays, you know? Yeah. And frankly, even those books I found to be really culturally insensitive and inaccurate. And so I was incensed and I didn't know what I was going to do about it, but I did start writing. I didn't know if it was very good. It took me about a year before I even shared it with anybody. Really? Yeah.
How did you, can I ask how you developed the character and the initial storyline? Did you have other ideas? Did you kind of like, you know, have a whole like map of connecting strings, like you're solving a mystery?
Yeah, no, I mean, I kind of did it, you know, because we're actors, the work about creating her was very much character work. And I just kind of journaled as who I thought this girl would be, who is very much based on me, my friends, my kids. It's a mixture of so many things. You know, I know her inside and out because it's very much based on true stories. Yeah. And then, you know, like they say, when you're starting to write what you know. So when I was trying to think, I had like a list of like what the narratives would be. And the very first book, Always Anjali, is about what happened to me when I was little and when I grew up and everyone told me I had to change my name to work. I lost jobs as an actress because I refused to change my name. I have so many stories about, maybe one day I'll call them out in that memoir, right? Yeah. About people who, you know, literally said to me, you're not, if you just change your name, we'll give you the job, that type of thing.
That is,
yeah. And so I thought, you know, I know how kids are struggling with feeling like how they need to fit in. And the broader idea is that you shouldn't have to change anything about yourself in order to fit in any way. And so for Anjali in the first book, it was very much about like her name and wanting to change it because she was made fun of and never found a license plate. And until she learns that it's actually great to have that name and what it means and that it's to be celebrated. But it's all based on, all of my books are like all loosely based on true stories. And I didn't know anything about publishing. I remember I went to my acting manager and just said, I have this idea. I have this children's book and I love her. But she was like, I know nobody. I don't know how to help you with this. And I was like, great, like, thanks.
Well, you were my one. I guess I'll cross you off and start a new list.
Exactly. And so then I just started like, now that with the internet and everything, there's so much out there. So I just started like, it was like 6 months of like emailing and cold emailing and reading and like just sending things to people that I hope would read it, and slowly found my way, got an agent, submitted it. It took years before I found the right publisher.
And by this time you started while you were incubating a baby, and now you by this time have a baby. Okay, wow. Yes. So this is happening in the background while motherhood is happening in the foreground, or vice versa.
Yeah, and while I'm also still acting and doing all the other things that we do. But it was something I wasn't sure what would happen. And then when the first book became so successful, it clearly tapped into something that I knew there was a huge void in. And I'm like, and I also, there's a lot of people when I was submitting my books that were like, we just want like happy books. And I'm like, first of all, my book is happy. Like it's very joyful, but it actually deals with I was like, I'm not going to write a book about like the unicorn and dinosaur, like going camping together. Like I write about, and those are fine, and that's what everyone wants. They want like the cute bunny stories and the cute dog stories. And I was like, I write about real things because I know kids want to talk about them and they want in. And I cannot tell you how, since my books have like gone out, how many times kids are like, thank you for like treating us like people and not, and know that we can have these conversations and they're important and we have to have them young.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing I was going to ask, the idea of not only getting into, writing in general, but then getting into writing for children. And it's the whole SpongeBob of it all where like kids can handle it. And in fact, they want it. Like you're saying that I'm curious about like the writing process for you with the storytelling of like, how do you decide how filtered to go on a topic for children? Or do you just kind of say, I trust my instincts on this?
Well, I will say to the earlier point about kids being able to handle it, I always like to say when people say that to me, who are pushing back, I'm like, kids are being gunned down in schools. They can handle conversations about racism and bullying. Like, give me a break.
Snap.
You want them to get a bulletproof backpack and you don't want them to talk about racism? Come on. So I'm just like, stop it. But in terms of, I will say it is a process for me. Bravo, Anjali, I knew we were going to do more, that it's a series, it's done well. And I was writing it and I had written something completely different. And then Hillary and Trump, political, that election happened and I'm very involved in the political scene. And
I've seen your Twitter.
And I, it was the height of the Me Too movement and I was getting so many flashback trauma memories from just like things, and maybe you can relate, but like when we started out back in the day, things happened on such a regular basis that you don't have time to be outraged for every little thing. Yeah. And I was telling my husband, I'm like, there's so much that's coming back to me that I forgot about or just was like, oh, whatever. Yeah. And so all that was going on and I was writing this and I was like, what? I have an opportunity. Is there a way to put this in kids' world? Like the Me Too kind of sexist, misogyny, all the just stuff. Wow. And so Bravo, Anjali, so I changed it and I decided to do a book for kids that dealt with these in kids speak. And so in the second book, so I always have an Easter egg at the end of each book where it gives you a clue of what the next book would be. Now, I had no idea that. And then when I looked back at Always Anjali, there's a picture of Anjali playing the tabla at the end. And then it clicked. And I was like, I want to do this. The tabla is a traditionally male-dominated instrument. That's it. That was my entry point. And so then I just started thinking, okay, so she's going to play the tabla. She's going to be the only girl in her class. She's going to be the best. The boys aren't going to like it. And that's where the story begins. And so she deals with how to be the only girl in the room. And she starts messing up on purpose because she wants the kids to like her. Yeah. And so she has to end up learning that she should never dim her light. Wow. And that you should never let anyone make you feel bad for being good at something. So I think very important for girls, but also there's this conversation that happens between her friend, who's a boy, and her, because I really wanted to give boys language around this because I think we see what happens, aka Brett Kavanaugh, when you don't have these kind of things talked about. And so I didn't let him off the hook. This is all, again, in kid world, but it at the end, it starts, though. Yeah, exactly. And so I really like kind of using the conversation between Deepak and her friend, because she doesn't, he says he's sorry. And she doesn't say, oh, it's okay. She says, you really hurt my feelings. Like it wasn't okay. And I think it's important to like show that these things are important. Like it's not okay. Yeah. We can move on, but like we have to talk about it. And so that's what the second book is about. And I'm really excited about it coming out.
I can barely tell that you are so excited about this.
when you work on something for so long and then it's fine.
I mean, this feels like another labor for you, like truly childbirth in a way.
Well,
there's so much symbolism.
I will say and this is public, so it's not like, I have 2 kids. I wanted more. I always wanted a lot of kids. But when I was diagnosed with cancer, that was off of the table. And I was told very clearly, you'll never be able to have a child again. And as I was grieving that, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to put it, all of my books, all of my movies, like these are going to be my babies. Like they really are. I feel that way to me. So that's where I'm channeling it all.
I have so much respect and adoration for that. It's so... I have to take a break right now, but we're going to keep this conversation going in just a second. We'll be right back with more Not Too Deep.
Not too deep. With Grace Helbig.
Hello, listeners. Grace Helbig here, wanting to say 2 things. A big thank you for listening to the podcast. If you're a regular listener, if this is your first time listening, welcome and thank you. And second thing, if you are enjoying yourself here in this not too deep world we've built and you'd like to leave us a review, that would be so wonderful. If you can go to the iTunes store, the App Store, and leave us a lovely little review, comment. How are you feeling? Good, bad, otherwise? Maybe just good or otherwise would be appreciated. Other than that, enjoy the podcast. I'm so just eager and excited about what you do. I've always been fascinated by people that write children's books, but write them in a really deep and meaningful way. I'm curious in that I'm trying to find in my notes, your illustrator, Lucia, is that the name?
For Bravo Anjali, Lucia Soto, yes.
Okay. I'm curious because it feels like, especially for children's books, the content itself and then the illustrations are such a collaborative thing.
Yes.
How did that relationship come to be for you?
Yeah, it's hand in hand, and you need. I mean, Lucia is amazing. So the way it works in traditional publishing is when you sell a manuscript, you sell it to the publisher, and then they own it, and then they hire the illustrators, and you take it from there. Now, I was very clear with all of my deals that I wanted to have a say in who that would be, and that it would be collaborative, and that all of that. And so the publisher I work with is amazing, and so she kind of sent a bunch of options, and we talked about it together. And then you have calls, you see who gets it. I wanted to see what's your vision for the story. Yeah. And Lucia has been tremendous. She's doing book 3 and all the rest of the books that will happen. Just come on. And she is, she's wonderful. I will say she takes, which is the process, right? Like you have a manuscript, and my manuscript has probably changed even another 25 times after she starts doing the pictures, because you realize you don't need as many words when the pictures do the work for you.
Sure. Yeah.
And so with this age group, which is illustrated books, which is like 4 to 9, you need text, but the words you use have to be you have to pick them wisely. And so they work hand in hand with the book. And so the rhythm of it, I will see, being an actor really helps write this age book, because they're meant to be read out loud. And so it really, being a performer really helps with the rhythm of getting all of those things right on the page.
I've never thought about the idea of, obviously, children's books are read out loud to them. So it's almost like composing like a piece of music, that it all works together and like supports each other. That's
There's a
so
rhythm,
interesting.
and I'm sure with your stand-up too, like when you're working it out, like for me, I do have a focus group with my kids, who are the perfect age. I have lots of friends with kids. When I'm trying to work through something, I just go and read it to them, because then it's clear, like I'm working it out, and then I can figure out the answer. Yeah,
I was going to ask, how much do you actually kind of talk to your children about what you're working on?
They won't have it any other way.
Really?
I have a 4 and a 7-year-old, so they're just like they're really focus group.
Yeah.
And they also love books. And my 7-year-old learned how to read this past year, so she just is like,
That's
I love
great.
how much she loves to read.
In an age of technology, that's such a wonderful thing for a child to cultivate.
She loves it, and she's always wanting to write with me, and it's adorable. They're very clear when they don't like something. I had a book that I'm on deadline with, and I read it to her. It's a chapter book,
Yeah.
And the boy, the main character of the book is a boy, and he learns a very important lesson. And my daughter started crying, and she was like, "I don't like that. That shouldn't happen to him. Why are you making him have to learn a lesson?" And I was like, Amber, like, this is life. And it was so interesting that she had such a visceral reaction to it. And I was like, this is why I need to keep it in, because you kids need to know what it's like when you don't get what you want.
Yeah.
And, it was just so, they have a lot of opinions and thoughts.
Wow.
But it did make me soften it a little. I was like, maybe I don't need to be harsh with it. Fine, I'll soften it a little, but it's going to still happen.
Is this, anyway, I'll cut this out if this is not appropriate, Making Happy?
No. So Making Happy is, that's been announced. This is something that hasn't been announced. Making Happy, I wrote when I was sick, when I was going through chemo.
Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about that, because I know, because I've researched everything about you, but for people that don't know your story, can you kind of like talk to us about it?
Sure. I was diagnosed with breast cancer in December of 2018. It was a huge shock to me and everybody around me, which just tells you cancer doesn't discriminate. And I say that in the sense of like, all the things the doctor tells you to change about your life, I was already doing. I've been plant-based since I was 15 years old. I work out 5 times a day. I'm healthy. I don't smoke. I breastfed. I had kids, like all the things that they tell you. I was already doing it. So there was no quote, not that there is a reason, but it was a shock.
Yeah.
And it was pretty serious. And so I had a double mastectomy. I had a year of treatment, including 12 rounds of chemo and immunotherapy. I had reconstruction. It was a tough couple years. At that time, my kids were 2 and 4. And the hardest part with my kids were after my surgery, not being able to hug them. At that age for a very long time was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to deal with, because all they want is like, to lay on you. And I couldn't risk it. But even just like seeing the chemo and I had all these very rare reactions. I lost my eyesight at times. I had neuropathy. I had folliculitis on my bald head, which means you have blisters all over. I mean, it was like horrible.
Yeah.
And I was looking for books because I needed to find ways to talk about this with my kids. And all I could find when it dealt with death or illness were very abstract books. Like, this chair represents the person or whatever, like nothing, again, nothing that talked to kids in a real way. And I was like, God, come on. Again, this idea of like kids need this and and everybody deals with illness in families. Yeah. And so I just started writing, and it's called Making Happy. And it's about a girl whose mom is sick. And it's very personal. It's probably the most personal thing I've written, and how they deal with it. And then they have real conversations about what's going on. And she asks her, why did you get sick? And all of the things that kids need to talk about. But it's also very joyful. It's called Making Happy. And it's all about this idea of like just making happy in every moment you can, because you just don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And like you said, it's really, I think, hugely important. And I'm sure for you on a personal level, just like for your soul, necessary to be able to communicate these really complex emotions and situations to yourself and your children. Yeah. Like you don't want to wait until it happens for a child to have to figure out how to handle it.
Yeah. And I'm frankly tools. Like, I don't have the answers. And that's the thing. Yeah. Like, I don't know why or how or what. And everything that I thought I knew, I wasn't ever really, I'm not a religious person. I don't believe things happen for a reason. It makes me crazy when I hear that. I think that things happen, and I think I think we all tell ourselves stories to make ourselves feel better about it. But I do think things are quite random, and there's no rhyme or reason to things. And so tomorrow is not promised. And I know that so well. I've had a lot of tragedy in my family, in my life, and after everything I went through. And so I want to be really honest about that with kids in a way that's not scary, in a way that feels just honest.
There's like a blunt gentleness to the things that you're doing that I really appreciate. I'm going to steer a little bit off course and get into some sillier conversation. I'm going to ask you the 2 questions I ask every single guest that's on the podcast. And the first is, Who, alive or dead, would you most like to throw cold spaghetti at?
Cold spaghetti.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
It's a tough one. I know.
It is. I'm like, there's so many people on that wall of shame. My goodness. Wow.
But this can also, I'm just going to put it out there. One, this is an answer that can change on an hourly or daily basis.
Right.
Two, it can also change in the intention in which you want to throw it. You can throw it celebratory. You can throw it happily. You can throw it silly, comedically, however you decide.
Yeah. I mean, not to state the obvious, but I feel like the most kind of current thing, and I really feel it though with all of my soul, is, number 45. I don't even like to say his name.
Very popular answer.
But I mean, I really do. Like, there's so much about him that it just is like, what's wrong in the world?
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you have, like, if there is a test case or like a psychology or a psychiatry book to be talked about, like what not to do or how not to raise a child, I think he is like the perfect kind of test case around that.
Yes.
But there's so much that continues to happen because of him. And it really hurts my heart.
Yeah. Well, you're not alone in that answer at all whatsoever. I don't want to give him any more time on this podcast. So,
yes.
Okay. The other question I ask every single guest is to tell us your worst pants shitting story, or a bathroom emergency situation that you experienced. However, you can only tell us in using 3 words or 3 small phrases, or some kind of combination of those things. Mine, to give you an example, is college jogging front lawn.
Okay. 3 words. I will say bar, illegal substances.
Okay. Yeah, that'll do it.
And no bathrooms available.
Oh, no follow-up questions for me, but that sounds pretty rough. And I do appreciate that you had a story on deck to be able to tell us. Some people don't.
I was like, do we go the pregnancy route? Because there's a lot there too. Just a lot that happens.
Sure. Okay. Now we have a part of the podcast called Deep and Hot, where we've already kind of gotten pretty deep, but I have a deep question prepared for you, if you're okay to answer. And then a hot take on something that we have prepared for you, if you're okay to give us a hot take on something.
Okay.
So, deep question for you is, when you see your children, who and what do you see?
I really do see them for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm always looking for me and my husband in them, because they are such their own people that I'm like, I know I'm in there somewhere.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting.
I'm kind of like, because there's some friends that are like, they're so me. And I'm like, I don't feel that. My kids are such their own people.
Wow.
And I'm just trying to like find, and I think with time, as they get older, I'll probably see it more. But,
yeah, they're at the age where they're developing like personalities now.
They have full personality. They couldn't be more different.
Wow.
And my goal is 2 things. One is to make sure they're not assholes. Like, that's our job, like more than anything.
That's a great
and
goal.
Number 2 is like, I just try to brainwash them, because I've got 2 girls, to like make them appreciate each other. I'm like, this is your person. This is the person you'll have in your whole life. She is like, and I just am like trying to get it in their head that like they need to be good to each other forever. That's important to me.
Even if they don't recognize it now, it's planted that at some point they'll look around and see this giant tree behind them and go, oh, shoot. Okay. You've kind of already answered a little bit of this hot take that we have for you, but I'm curious if there's anything else that comes up. It's a hot take, whatever your hot take is, on people that might think children shouldn't be exposed to, quote, like big ideas.
I think those people should sit down and listen to kids. because they do. And like I said, you can't turn on the TV without something going on in the news. Kids are literally being shot in their classrooms.
Yep.
There's, metal detectors coming into schools.
Yeah.
So, I do so many school visits with my kids, and it was so interesting. I did one with Always Anjali just a few months ago at the end of this past school year. And a first grader asked me if I wrote the book after what happened to George Floyd.
First grader asked you that. Wow.
And it just tells you, like, people know what's going on, and they're talking about it. They're curious. They want to know. And I told him, I was like, actually, I didn't, but I know why the book had been out before that, but I said, I know why you're asking that. And I love that you connected that and thought about that when you read the book.
Yeah. Just validating their feelings and experiences around things that I think people don't believe children understand or notice or like witness. There's
so much kind of interpretation about stuff. A lot of people like to say like kids are colorblind, and I'm like, they're not colorblind. It's ridiculous. Kids can see color. The difference is kids don't put value to it. And it's the adults that teach them that certain colors are, valued a certain way. Like, of course they can see red, white, blue, whatever.
Yeah.
But they don't think about it the way we do. And that's the difference, And so it's just about being intellectually honest about this. And I think that most of the problems are the ones we have, and we put them on our children.
Yeah. That's it seems so obvious, but it's not to so many people, which is why this is like a conversation that's happening. Okay. I have to take one last break. When we get back, you're just a wealth of information. So I think you'll be able to really help someone that's written in with a question. We'll be right back with more Not Too Deep.
Not Too Deep with Grace Helbig.
Sheetal, I wanted to ask you, before we give in, we're back in, before we get into giving some guidance to someone that's written in, you do live streams on your Instagram with people a lot, and you work a lot with like life coaches or a lot of, and so I'm curious what your thoughts are in that world.
So it's interesting. The Handel Group, which is the coaching company, woman Laurie Gerber was my life coach. She's not anymore, but it came to me through a friend a few years ago. And it was just one of those interesting serendipitous things. It was in a really tough time. I was going through cancer. It was all the stuff. And my friend was like, I've been working with this woman and she's looking to try new clients and et cetera, et cetera. Would you be? And I was like, you know what? I've never done it, but why not? I entertained the thought. And I had a number of conversations with her that I really, it really helped me. It really helped me. For someone like me, I'm a very kind of academic thinker, and I've been in therapy most of my life. I hadn't been for a while, but the work that we did really helped me look at myself, my work, my personal life in a way that I had never thought about before. And so, and I just, as when something like comes into your life that's helpful, like I just want to share it and have more people have access to it. So we started doing these lives, just talking about certain things and in the best way you can in a short period of time. And so that's where that came from. And I recommend it, for anybody. I think that we all can benefit from, whether it be coaching or therapy or whatever it is that gives you that. I think it would make us all a better place.
I am with you on that note. You and I are going to try to offer someone else a bit of guidance coaching, whatever word you want to use. This one is kind of straight to the point, and I am curious about your thoughts on this. So a listener and viewer has written in basically a lack of motivation is what they're looking for. They say, I feel like I have no motivation or drive to do anything. What can I do to try to find the motivation to start working on myself and or becoming better?
It's hard. I mean, some days I feel that way too.
Same.
And some days you feel like it and some days you don't. I always say that on the days that you feel that, where you feel like I don't have any energy or need or desire to do anything, do one small thing. Just force yourself to do one tiny thing. And then and the thing is, you will feel so much better about yourself when you do that one thing. That I think feeds into the like, think about how you'll feel when you do 2 small things or 3 small things. And on the days that you feel really good, do 20 things because you'll get there. You just have to get it into I think you have to train yourself. And I think you know this when you're in this kind of business. It's all self-generated. It's all self-motivated. If we don't do the work and get up, there's no structure to our day unless we create it.
There's no one to blame but ourselves.
Exactly. So you either want to do it or you don't. And it's really up to you if you want to have the life that you want. And one of my favorite quotes is, this time next year, you will have wished you started today. And so it's just a great way to keep in mind, like every small thing adds up because days are long, but the years go by fast. And so we got to just find our way.
I love that because that is how I felt in my life about many different things is going, what if I like followed that inkling that I had about something that seemed way too hard to do then? Because I think people can get very lost or overwhelmed by looking at big picture rather than, like you're saying, one small thing at a time gets you to like, you can't drive cross country unless you start getting in a car and like turn the engine on and then leave your driveway. But like eventually, if you keep doing that, if you keep putting your foot on the gas, you can, add miles. And so because I know for myself, a lot of times that I will get overwhelmed by wanting to get to the conclusion of a hard time versus taking the time to just like be patient with myself, give myself forgiveness of like, one thing at a time. And if you can do that one thing, wow. What about 2 things?
I think it's also good to set like daily goals, weekly goals, monthly goals, short and long term, like something that actually my coach helped me do.
Yeah, I'm curious about what your routine is or what tips and tricks you have. Yeah,
like for me, and this is because I do thrive on scheduling and like all of that. I need it. I need structure. And I was finding myself here's the thing, you work so hard, you're trying to get all these things going. And gratefully in the last year, like everything I've been working on is finally all coming together, like TV deals and movies and books. And like, so it's great, but I'm very overwhelmed. Yeah. And so I sometimes open my computer and I'm just like, I don't even know where to start.
Flooded. I get flooded so easily where it's like all of these,
and then you just want to turn it off and just like do nothing.
Yep. Yeah. And it's so like every car has entered the Lincoln Tunnel and they've all crashed into each other. And I can't figure out how to get to New York or New Jersey right now.
Exactly. And then what happens is, and then you end up doing like the easiest thing, which is like answering like ordering your meal or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. I walked my dog and I'm considering that doing something when it's just what she needs every day.
Totally. So for me, what has really helped is every night before I go to sleep is I schedule my next day. Like I'm going to, like I really just make a schedule. Like my kids, when I have my kids here, I have them like till like 9, I meditate, I work out, eat. This is my breakfast time. And then I carve out like from 10 to 12, I'll be writing. From 12 to 2, I'll be answering emails. From these times, I'm like, I make a point to just like slot things out. So I will have, because what happens is you can sit and answer emails all day. Yeah. And then I can't actually get any creative work done. So I really just like set times aside for that. And then when it's time with my kids in the evening, because I have a babysitter that helps, I have a rule that I keep my phone in my room and otherwise like I'll be on it all the time with them. Yep. And I just keep little notepads around because I get ideas, especially with them all the time. So I just like write down the idea if it comes to me so I don't forget it, but I never leave them and I keep my phone. So then when they go to sleep, I can go back and like look at all the stuff. And so I do that every night. And then I do that on Sundays for the week. And then I do like short term, like this is what I want by the end of the year. I really do. For me, it helps me like really organize.
Do you find that those are great ideas, especially just having notepads all around just in the off chance and not needing your phone near you? Do you find that scheduling creative time works for you if you know that like you have that? Or are there days where sometimes you're like, I'm not feeling it right now?
I think you should pay attention to that when you don't feel it and you can just like pivot. But I know for me, the funny thing is in those creative times is not when I get my ideas. I get my ideas like when I'm dreaming,
everything,
or when I'm like showering, or all the other things, which is why I just write those down. And then in the times where I've scheduled, I can go and like expand, explore, and whatever. Because when you're looking for it, you're never going to find it.
Right,
you know how it is. Like it doesn't come. So I just keep a running thing because I can't work on it at the time you have the idea. So then I go and schedule the time to work on it.
Oh, that's so smart. I mean, if you weren't busy with so many other books, I'd say write one about self-help and life and all of that. Well, we've reached the end of the podcast and I could talk to you for hours. But one thing that we like to do for our guests that make time to talk to us is we create a personalized horoscope that we have written from us to you that Melissa has put in the chat. If you would like to read yours out loud, again, like we're not therapists, we are not astrologers, so it is what it is.
Oh, I'm so excited. Okay, I'll read it. Dear Cancer, Crab of the Stars, this year you've released a book, are already working on the next one, and battled cancer during a freaking pandemic. We think it's about time the stars got their shit together to say, bravo, Sheetal. I think so too.
Right?
I think so too. I'm like, enough.
I agree. I am so thankful that you have made time to talk with us today. This has been so lovely. Where can people find you? Where can they get the book if they don't already know?
Thank you. First of all, thank you for having me. This has been a joy, especially because I think you're wonderful and so funny and so talented. So thank you. The easiest thing is to just go to my website, sheetalsheth.com, because then you have links to all of the things. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I haven't delved into the TikTok world yet. I don't know how to do all that.
Me either.
but I love hearing what you think. You can get my books. You can go to my website. It'll take you to links to indie shops, which I highly recommend you support. You can also get it at the one you all know. They're all there. It's everywhere. You can order books. You can order the books. And if they don't have it, they'll order it for you. So just do what you feel best, but try to go indie.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Also, if you guys need a private investigator, she's available, as you've seen by the beautiful shading of blinds if you're watching this on YouTube. Thank you so much. This has been so fun. Get the books. Follow her for all of her conversations. She's talking to great people. And also, if you want to get spicy, follow that Twitter because she's got some political views.
Yes, I do.
Thank you so much. Guys, enjoy this episode. Hope you have. We'll see you next time on another episode of Not Too Deep. Goodbye.
Too deep, too deep, too deep, not too deep with Grace Helbig.
Not Too Deep is a production of Grace Helbig Incorporated, producer Melissa D. Montz, edited by Shireen Lani Yunus, post-production sound by Chris Henry, and an extra special thanks to Flula for the theme music.